Three Films and a Podcast has no claim of ownership on any film footage used in this episode. All film footage is owned in its entirety by the copyright holders and is used solely with the intent of film criticism, commentary, and education under fair use law. And just like every car in Too Fast, Too Furious, this podcast contains spoilers. Enjoy.
Hello and welcome back to Three Films and a Podcast, the show where destiny saw three friends form a movie club to broaden theirs and everyone else's cinematic horizons. My name is Matt Weiler, coming to you from the most pleasant of groves, Utah, and I'm joined as always by Tyler Beck up in Portland, Oregon.
Hello, everybody. Nice to see you again.
As well as always with Ben Lawhorn up in Salt Lake City.
Hello.
Ooh, we all avoided a Mission from God joke.
We did.
I can't believe it.
I didn't know if I was going to go for it. And I was
we have
like,
sinned.
well, yeah, that's true.
We have sinned.
Apologies.
For those new to the show, we want to welcome you to the movie club. What began as sort of a movie club amongst us three in a group chat has kind of evolved into a little bit of a community here as we've tried to grow this podcast and bring our movie club to everybody else. Now you can find us anywhere that you listen to podcasts. We're on all the social media platforms. Basically, you can't hide from us anymore. So we're there. We're here to stay. So just tune in, enjoy. We also have a Patreon if you want to get involved that way and support the podcast. We try to sweeten that deal as much as we possibly can. So check that out if you're interested. But we're excited tonight for this episode because we have today joining us in this round of music movies, Bill and Jason from the All 80's Movies podcast.
Woohoo! I guess that's our cue.
Yeah, that's your cue. We're off and rolling here.
Gentlemen, it's a real. Oh, we're live. We're live. People.
We're live.
So, and Ben will not edit that.
Yeah, that'll
emphasize it. Yeah,
that'll be the bumper, or that'll be the cold open.
Yeah.
Gentlemen,
Bill and Jason,
go for it, Ben.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about your pod?
So the All 80's Movies podcast, of course, is about all 80's movies from 1980 to 1989. It's the decade that Jason and I grew up in. We met together in college. Those are the movies we rewatched together over and over again. All the movies we would quote over and over again. All the movies we talked about all over again. That's the defining decade of us. That's really, Jason and I worked on some movie projects and stuff like that. And these are really the movies that kind of are base of what we love and do in the film project. So we just love going back, talking about all these 80's movies, just sharing them with the new generation and stuff like that. So it's just a fun show. We just have a blast and just reminiscing about the good old times.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It actually kind of reminds me a lot of our show, just in that you're trying to explore a bunch of stuff. There's so much good stuff still from the 80's, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like when you think about a show being geared only towards the 80's, it might seem fairly limited, but there's tons of stuff out there. And it's just like much in the same vein of our show. It's like, it's all about exploration and just like exposing everyone to all the good stuff that's still out there.
Yeah, because that's like the two things we always get questioned on. It's like, why are you just doing the 80's? And they're like, we could do 10 years of this show.
Yeah.
It comes out weekly, and we still are not going to be covering everything.
Exactly.
And then the next thing is like, oh, when are you going to get to such and such? I'm like, we can only do one movie at a time. I'm sure we'll get to it at some point.
We'll get there, yeah.
We're trying our best.
If you want to like sign up as a patron, maybe that'll help us find more time to do these things more often.
That is one of the most interesting questions you get from people. Like, when are you guys going to talk about this movie? Like, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. Like, we'll try, what I mean? Like, hopefully we can, but yeah, I mean, I really enjoy you guys' show. I think the most recent one I listened to or the one I listened to most recently was your Dirty Dancing one,
Oh, cool.
which has become like a personal favorite movie of mine within the last decade. Like I
So good.
found out about it in my 30s. I was like, oh, this movie's awesome. And it's still like one of my top 10 lines all time of like, I carried a watermelon. Like I just like listening to your episode, like, oh my God, please say that. Cause it's I don't know. It's just the silliest line and I love it. And I love that movie. And your guys' episode on that movie was great.
Thanks for saying that, man. That's a funny thing about that line because one of the great things about doing that podcast, first of all, let me just take a step back and say it's a pleasure to be on this pod with you gentlemen.
Thanks.
I am already a fan of yours and thanks for having us. Let me
Yeah,
just get
absolutely,
that out of
man.
the way. Also, one of the great things about doing the All 80s Movies podcast is really just a matter of perspective. It's the then and now perspective, because looking at those films during, when we grew up with these movies, it was during our formative years. And it's, for me personally, the reason why I got into filmmaking was, it started in 77 with Star Wars, but then it moved into the 80s. That's really when it caught on for me. And now looking at those films as an adult, as a mature adult, and it's kind of interesting looking at them through new eyes, like fresh eyes, revisiting something like Dirty Dancing. And some of those quotes that pop out at you are different lines, like I carried a watermelon, which was not one of those quotes. It's always, people will go to, don't put baby in the corner. Nobody puts baby in the corner, right?
Yeah.
Which is the quintessential, that's the quote. But I carried a watermelon. And funny enough, it was Bill's wife that had called us out on it, like saying, why didn't you emphasize that more in your podcast? That is like, it was something to that effect, right, Bill? She kind of like got on our case a little bit. We call her, like, lovingly, we've assigned the moniker program director.
Nice.
She just
like
has
that.
her comments, but she's our number one fan, so we can't complain.
That's
And
awesome.
she does have great comments. But that's, it's, everybody's got their own take and attachment to these films, and we certainly have ours, and that's what we love to share. So, but it's just great to be here with you guys tonight.
Yeah, we're stoked to have you guys here.
Yeah, to talk about another 80s classic.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we're grateful to have you guys. Now, segueing into the episode, I always, when I host, I like to do a visualization exercise.
It's my favorite.
And for anyone listening right now, I'd like you to participate in this. I'd like to ask you to close your eyes wherever you are, whatever you're doing. Even if you're driving or operating heavy machinery, if you're at work, just do it. Just hear me out for a few minutes. Everything will be fine. It's late June, 1980. You got the summer breeze going. You're walking to the cinema and you're scanning the titles of the marquee, and you're trying to find something that stands out. And a movie starring a young actor of Saturday Night fame that you've grown fond of over the last few years. No, I'm not talking about Urban Cowboy starring John Travolta. I'm talking about The Blues Brothers starring John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd.
Beautiful.
I guess before I talk about why I chose this movie, I want to turn over to you guys, Jason and Bill, about your personal experience and maybe just a brief rundown of what this movie's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, thanks for that, Matt. That was a very meditative experience. It really took me back. I was in it. I was in the movie. I was looking up at the marquee.
I kept my eyes closed the whole time. That was the
You
first one
almost
I
saw
really
Urban
committed.
Cowboy.
Yeah, we
right.
almost walked in. We're like, nope. Yeah.
Well, I can actually start with the synopsis if you like, and then share a little bit of my personal experience or kind of initial thought about the entire movie. The synopsis that I'm going to share with you is basically, I'm stealing this from Bill and I's pod, and it's a segment called What's on the Box, because back in the 80s, we'd go to the local video store, and in order to find out what the movie was about, you got to pick up the VHS box off the rack and look at the back of it, and there's a blurb on the back that gives you a little snippet of what the movie is about, and we call, again, that segment What's on the Box. So
I'm just picturing that meme with, okay, sure, Grandma, let's get you to bed. Although those are some of my favorite memories with my grandparents, is going and reading the boxes. So
yeah, absolutely. So this is What's on the Box for The Blues Brothers from 1980. Here we go. After the release of Jake Blues from prison, he and brother Elwood go to visit the orphanage where they were raised by nuns. They learn that the church stopped its support and will sell the place to the education authority. And the only way to keep the place open is if the tax on the property is paid within 11 days. The brothers want to help and decide to raise the money by putting their blues band back together and staging a big gig. They may be on a mission from God, but they're making enemies everywhere they go. Featuring performances by some of blues's finest, James Brown, Cab Calloway, Ray Charles, Aretha Franklin, and co-starring John Candy, Carrie Fisher, Henry Gibson, and Steve Lawrence. The Blues Brothers. There you go. So there's your little synopsis. And I did not see this film in the theaters. I was probably 7, 8 years old when it came out. But I've seen it several times since. I personally do have what I call the CC, the Chicago connection to this film, because personally, I am from a northwest suburb of Chicago. And Chicago is a wonderful character in this film. They really, really do capture it well. Not just the city, but the surrounding suburbs, different counties, whether it be Joliet, Park Ridge, Calumet. So that kind of covers my personal connection. But guys, I'm just on board with this. It's a weird, over-the-top comedy musical romp, and it just goes to places you wouldn't expect. Is it a little long-winded in certain scenarios? Yeah, probably. But because of the comedic timing and the chemistry, the cameos, the choreography, I think the direction is brilliant. The editing is brilliant. I think it's just wonderfully executed on all levels. And the music's great. And the dry sense of humor. Yeah, I mentioned the cameo. So for me, you've got Princess Leia and Yoda in this. And I say Yoda, sort of, right? But so I'm all about it, except for the Nazis, because I too hate Illinois Nazis.
Don't we all?
Illinois Nazis. I hate Illinois Nazis.
Yeah.
That's my take on it. I just have this place. This has a movie that has a special place in my heart. It's just unique. It's one of one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, when did you say the first time you saw this was? Do you remember?
Gosh, it probably had to have been, it was definitely early 80s. Again, I didn't see it in the theaters, but it probably would have been probably closer to 83, 84.
Gotcha.
I would have to imagine. Yeah.
Nice.
Gotcha.
Awesome. How about you, Bill?
So for me, the first time, because growing up, my parents being the oldest kid, you always had the strict bedtimes. And I hated it because, back then you get HBO and movies would start at 8 o'clock, but bedtime was 9 o'clock. So
Tough.
the first time I got to watch The Blues Brothers was only half of it because 9 o'clock's bedtime. And I think it was at the part where they go to the Soul Food Cafe with Aretha Franklin and do the, Better Think. And then I was like, oh, what do you mean I got to go to bed? I want to watch the rest of this movie. And of course, the bedtime, so I didn't get the second half of it. But then my dad could not stop talking about this movie. Blues Brothers this, Blues Brothers that. He loved the Blues Brothers. So luckily, next time it came on, I finally watched it. It is one of my favorite. It is my top 10 favorite 80s films of all time.
Oh, nice.
Awesome.
A cool thing for me is I used to work for a sports organization that we would do like traveling shows, halftime and stuff like that. I actually got to play Elwood Blues a couple of times.
Rad.
Oh, wow.
Awesome.
There is actually a picture of me in the 1997 World Series magazine as Elwood Blues with Billy the Marlin, because we had done it was the Soul Man skit at one of their games. So that's my little claim to fame of that.
That's rad.
We've got to
I
hunt that
don't know how
picture
many
down.
times I was on ESPN Sports Center for doing that skit because they loved, showing Blues Brothers, stuff like that. So I just love this movie. I just think it's hilarious. Some of the best car chases put on film.
Yeah.
The music, like I said, the music's wonderful. I can't say enough about it. It's just a big deal for me. Like even like when I'm somewhere where there's House of Blues, I got to go to see a show.
Yeah.
Even if the music's put on there, it's just great. So to me, this is one of the best 80s films of all time. It's an underrated musical because we don't really think of it as a musical. We usually say more of a comedy, but it is a musical, and it really,
For sure.
like, it's really the first time I was introduced to James Brown or Cab Calloway or all these artists. that, just wasn't in my wheelhouse at the time. So it was great to be introduced to to new thing of music and just really embrace that music also. So, I just love it. I just love everything about it.
When you started talking about that photo of you in a 1997 sports event, I've had Chicago on the mind for obvious reasons. And I thought for sure you were going to be a picture of when the Bulls beat the Jazz in the 97 finals. You were going to break my heart. I was preparing myself. It was a tough time for young Tyler.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's funny that you mentioned it being a musical, because I was watching this with my girlfriend and I kind of turned to her. It's like, man, how often in movies that aren't musicals do people break out into like synchronized dancing? And she's like, this is a musical. This is a musical, isn't it? Like, I hadn't really thought about it. Like, it is. Yeah. Like I hadn't processed it that way. I'm like, no, this is a comedy where they just sing all the time. It's like, that's a musical. So,
Right.
this was my first complete watch through. As we were watching it, there was some stuff that I had seen before. In particular was the chicken wire performance when everyone's throwing stuff. I'm like, okay, I think I've seen stuff like this before. And then I had definitely seen the Aretha clip. So, those were the things I'm like, oh, okay, now I know where this is from. That makes sense. But I just, the whole time that I'm watching this, because you talked about all the musicians who cameo in here, as well as like just some of the actors and stuff. And I just felt like 2 hours. I was just like, as the DiCaprio meme, just pointing at the screen the whole time. I was like, hey, I know that guy. Hey, that's Ray Charles. Hey, that's John Lee Hooker. This
Princess
is so cool.
Leia? What's happening here?
Yeah. So it's like, that was like my experience the whole time. It's like, oh, I know that person too. That's cool. So I had a really good time with it though. And now, I would probably throw it on my musicals Rushmore, because now I know that this is a musical. So, things you learn, the more you know.
Yeah, it's funny, man, because like growing up, so I just turned 38. Congratulations, me, another year around the sun. Tyler. Just turned 38, and so like growing up, I definitely like my parents' friends were all about like just this whole vibe, right? Like the Blues Brothers, like it was right in their wheelhouse, like like right when they were teenagers or whatever, was when the Blues Brothers came out. They were in their early 20s or teens or whatever. And so it was definitely like always sort of in my life, like the black suits, the bowler hats, like the House of Blues, just like this general vibe, like the actual music itself. And so, but I'd never actually seen the movie until there is a theater in Utah called Broovies. It's in Salt Lake. Ben and Matt are familiar. Mm-hmm. And for Utah, it's a complete anomaly. Like they serve beer and food. Like you sit down, they have like good bar food and they'll bring you beers and stuff, which in Salt Lake City, like that's unheard of. Now, since I've moved out of Salt Lake, like I can get a beer at the Cinemark by my street. So it's the novelty is a little less, but nonetheless, it's a really fun place to watch a movie. And they used to do a thing where they would play like classic movies on Thursdays for $5 or whatever. And that was the first time I saw Blues Brothers. That's probably, I don't know, 10 years ago, who knows? And at the time, I thought the same thing that I thought this time rewatching it. Like you guys have said, it's about probably 30 minutes too long, moves a little bit slow, especially in the beginning. Like the beginning of the movie, I kept thinking like, I liked this movie. Like, I don't know if I like this movie anymore. My partner, Alex, kept asking me like, hey, how is it so far? And I was like, I don't know, babe. I don't know if I like it that much.
Those opening shots of like the smokestacks and stuff is like, did I pick the right movie? Did I like put the wrong thing on?
It's confusing, isn't it?
Yeah,
it throws you off. All those establishing
like,
shots, even within the jail too. It's wow, we are taking our time.
And I liked all that stuff. Like I thought that was a really cool way to like, just like you said, to establish the tone and everything. I liked all of it, but I just kept thinking like, come on, guys, like film was expensive in these days. Like, how did you have the budget for this? So, but by the end of it, especially towards right around the middle of the film, right when we like meet Aretha and we see John Lee Hooker and we go into Ray Charles and like, things start kind of picking up and then they do their performance, the chicken wire performance. But the second half of the movie, I was on again. I was like, okay, I posted that meme in our discussion, like, they had us in the first half. I'm not gonna lie. Like, then Cab Calloway doing Minnie the Moocher just floored me. I'd forgotten about it. It was my favorite part of the movie.
Hey folks, here's a story about Minnie the Moocher. She was a low down hoochie coocher.
Yeah, so overall, I really enjoyed it. I like that it's the inverse of a lot of movies where like the first half is good and the second half drags. So like you leave with a good taste in your mouth, at least in my opinion.
So this is my first time viewing, front to back. But I grew up in a home where this movie was just like beloved. And so I was around it often, but I hadn't like sat down to watch it. My dad absolutely loves this movie. He loved those characters on Saturday Night Live. He loves those actors. He loves the blues. He loves everything that this movie has in it. And in a weird way, even though like none of those individual things like represent my dad, but for whatever reason, like if I were to summarize my dad in one movie, it would be this movie. And so to like and to love and understand this movie is to love and understand my dad, Steve.
Nice.
So,
Hi, Steve.
Yeah. Hey, Steve. Dad. But I loved sort of I felt like the aesthetic was just so good in this movie with the blues. Like, and Jason, you said like Chicago, the character that has in this movie was just so cool, and it just fit the vibe, and it just like in that regard, like just fired on all cylinders, and it made all the blues, all the music, the artists, the actors just seem so cool and in sync with one another, throughout this movie. So I really loved that. That very first scene where Elwood pulls up to the prison and you just see that junky cop car. You can it's like you can smell the gas.
Yeah.
You can like smell that junk car.
That dirty gas
It's
smell.
like any movie that can get you to, any movie that can make you like sort of activate some of those sensory things is just like to me, it just like hits so sweet. But I did want to say, I really enjoyed that scene with Frank Oz where he's going through Jake's items.
Yeah.
And, we've come to know those scenes where they're just like going through these ridiculous things. But I got thinking about the people who are experiencing or who got to experience like that first SNL cast, who like really loved these characters, loved these actors, and just how exciting that must have been. Because they're kind of teasing you with John Belushi there. Like they didn't show his face. It's just his back. And so they're kind of like stringing you along and like building it up with some of that comedy there, like showing his items, showing his Ray-Bans. And I was just like, I couldn't help but just think like, oh man, that had to have been so cool to watch that. And that brings me to the next point, which I just want to talk about Saturday Night Live and sort of its role in pop culture. From my perception, just based off of the trajectory that, film and pop culture has gone, it seems like with outside of a few actors, these coming generations don't know that original cast the way that we do. And at least not in the same way. Like they're not experiencing the Bill Murray we experienced with, earlier on. Like the Wes Anderson Bill Murray is a very different Bill Murray than Caddyshack or Ghostbusters. And so I just wanted to hear from you guys, your thoughts on Saturday Night Live, its role, that original cast. Yeah, I guess just open forum on that.
I almost think of like now Saturday Night Live as like a sports team where it's growing up. My team was Phil Hartman, Dana Carvey, Mike Myers, and then they retired, and then in Adam Sandler and all that. Yeah. I think you grow up with the brand, but the team always changes. And then it's like, well, back in my day, we had Dan Aykroyd, Radner, but, this generation will mention who they had, or, we had Will Ferrell, or we had Bill Hader. I think that's what's great about it. It's like a team. It just keeps reinventing itself as it moves along. Yeah. And everyone has that connection to their era of when they really watched it. I mean, as a kid, I used to watch it religiously. Now I watch it maybe one or two episodes a season. It really depends on who the guest host is going to be. Yeah. It's cool too, because you do discover something new about it, a new comedy face and stuff. So it's always kind of reinventing himself. And I do like that, just kind of like a sports team. You have your highs and you have your lows, you had that year where you had Robert Downey Jr. and Anthony Michael Hall and it totally bombed, but they got through it.
Yeah.
You know, so that's the way I look at it too. And it always just peppers in with the culture too. You have Blues Brothers, your Wayne's World,
Right.
All that kind of stuff. So
that's awesome. Yeah. I like that analogy a lot. I think that like that fits, you know, when you're growing up, because I watched it, you know, on a regular basis as well. And like, I didn't care who the guest was. I'm like, I don't care. I'm here to see the players, you know what I mean? And they'll work around whoever they're with. And yeah, I think as you get older, it's like, well, who's coming on? Like, I still enjoy SNL, but I'm like, it's my, like, I don't know, need to watch it. It's like, well, who's the guest going to be? Like, if I think the guest is going to be good, I'll definitely watch it. If not, maybe I'll get to it later on or whatever. I kind of made the analogy similarly, being a sports team like this always felt like SNL felt like a farm team to me, you know, and, you know, being in a city that has a farm team with the Bees here. And then, you know, you see Mike Trout go off to the Angels and just like, you know, just like own the whole baseball league. And it's like, oh yeah, I remember watching him here. That was cool. You know, I mean, that he was here once. That was awesome. And that's kind of how it feels like SNL is, you know, it's like, we'll refine your skills here. We'll really kind of find out who's got the chops. And then, you know, Will Ferrell will send you on your way, or Tina Fey, you know, now it's time for you to like leave the nest. It's now time for you to do, you know, your own thing. So
it really is like the perfect proving ground for up and coming talent, because, you know, as long as people want to see this kind of stuff, and as long as it's profitable to exploit the young and the hungry, you know, like a show like SNL is always going to exist, and it's always going to just keep churning people out, because, you know, you cut your teeth, so to speak, on stage, whether it's like, you know, Second City or the UCB or on stand-up stages. And SNL really gives you the chance to like prove yourself on camera and figure out how to work with the camera and work with a team and all those sorts of things. And it's just like they just nailed it. Like they've got an unstoppable thing, and as long as there's someone willing to run it, like, it's just going to keep churning people out. It's pretty cool to see.
Oh yeah, yes, just really well said. I'm like soaking all this. I'm like, now what's the cool analogy I'm going to make? And I have none. I have none whatsoever.
Something.
So
I don't believe that for a second.
I believe it. So the thing is, for me, you know, you talk about just the farm system, but also these are people we got to see on a weekly basis, and they became family to us, or at least for me, you know, over a certain period of time. Whereas people I could visit on Saturday night, and you just didn't know what was going to happen, but you always had the feeling that this was the best, the cream of the crop, because they had to audition. It's New York City. It's big time. If you made it onto Saturday Night Live, you were off and running. And they're writers too, and they're working round the clock, man. And they're so it's on a Saturday night. It's live. You got nothing, you know. Even if you were at a party, you would turn it on. It was it was the thing you did, and there was an edge to it because it was late night. So now anything goes, anything can happen. It's live. It's late night. It's going to be edgy. It's could be slightly off color, but it was also had that cool like familiarity. It was something you could rely on. Every weekend. And on the most simplistic, humanistic level, I like to laugh. I believe we all love to laugh, and to be able to look forward to laughing each week. But like Bill, you know, I had my cast, including, you know, beginning with those days with Dana Carvey and Phil Hartman, then graduating to Adam Sandler, Chris Farley, and to, you know, my favorite sketches, you know, to watch Chris Farley do Matt Foley, the motivational speaker, and to watch the cast members actually break character and break each other up, crack each other up in between, was just the most visceral live thing. And obviously there's been so many sketch comedy shows that date, you know, beyond or further back before Saturday Night Live, and they'll always be around. But I even caught on to Mad TV then for a while there. And but Saturday Night Live it's just, for better or worse, it's different now. It's just different. And yes, like Bill said too, we have a different perspective. You know, back in my day, we had such and so, you know, but still, what a special staple, something that was just a reliable thing for so long. And you got your news that way. And what I loved about the show was that you watch the news, especially today, you know, it can be heavy, right? We can all agree on that. It gets really heavy. And then at the end of the week, you sit down and you watch this show and you realize, oh, I don't have to take life so seriously. We can make fun of some of this stuff.
Yeah.
We can, or have fun with it, because what else are you going to, if you can't laugh, what are you going to do? So
there's definitely a comfort to it, right? Because SNL as an entity has been around for a long time. Like my grandpa has moments watching SNL that, he was like my age when the original cast came out, like he saw Chevy Chase and Bill Murray and all those guys. And then all the way up through, I don't, like you guys are saying, I don't really watch SNL that much anymore, but it's just been, SNL itself has always been around, and to know that it's going to be there, it's going to help you process whatever's on the news. Like you said, you know what I mean? There's certainly
weekend update,
an element of comfort to it that I think is worth noting for sure.
It's cool. And Matt, I'm glad you asked this question, or all of you, when you put these questions together, because it makes you think and it gives us perspective, because now doing this particular film with the Blues Brothers, we have an appreciation for history, right? The forefathers, because these guys came in to do Saturday Night Live. This was near the beginning. When you talk about Bill Murray or Chevy Chase or Eddie Murphy, the guys that came in first, they were the first ones to do it, and they made it and it wasn't easy, and it wasn't a hit in the beginning,
right?
And Lorne Michaels getting it off the ground, all of that. There's real history there
for sure.
And these guys were putting it out there, and there was significant risk. I mean, they're not household names at the time. It's not the same as it is today. So it's cool to see this was this was how it was in the beginning. These guys.
I think of SNL as like it's already been, all the best things have already been said, but it's a great platform to test and engage the trajectory of comedy. Yeah. Since comedy is always changing, it's the sketch format is just such a great way to see, what, this is working, this is not working, this is what people like today, this is what people do not like today, and build off of that. And I feel like the ones that catch on are the ones that we end up remembering. And the great thing that I've just out of observation love about Saturday Night Live is that depending on which class of cast you're following, the best of that cast may not have worked, in the 70s or in the 80s. Right. Like trying to imagine Adam Sandler in the original cast, or even Adam Sandler now, he probably wouldn't have hit the same way that he did during the time that he came on. And now he's like one of the more successful, SNL alumni of all time, with the production juggernaut that he has. So
I feel like you could take someone like Gilda Radner and put her on any year, any season, and she would have just destroyed. Like she was always funny. Like
I was going to bring up Jane Curtin too. Yeah,
but exactly.
Gilda Radner's. It was sure.
Dear Rosanna Dana, last Thursday I quit smoking. Now I'm depressed, I gained weight, my face broke out, I'm nauseous, I'm constipated, my feet swelled, my gums are bleeding, my sinuses are clogged, I got heartburn, I'm cranky, and I have gas. What should I do? Mr. Fader, you sound like a real attractive guy. You belong in New Jersey.
Yeah, I mean, even just Jane, you ignorant slut, like all that kind of stuff. Like, it's just like, that stuff is so funny. And I think, we all have our team that we like came up with, but I still have all of the like best of SNL DVDs for like Eddie Murphy. Like Mr. Robinson's Neighborhood was just one of the funniest things. Like, what do you want? Damn, like, it's just like, there's so much funny stuff that some of it I think transcends, and just would be funny whenever. And I kind of brought that up in my notes, just some of their movies hit, like Blues Brothers, Wayne's World, like that stuff, it'll always hit. But then, you get like It's Pat, or Stuart Saves His Family. It's like, I don't know what they were thinking with this, but they did it, like that's great. But I think
all be winners.
I think a lot of it's just kind of in the middle ground. Like Superstar is great, stuff like that. I really like those movies, but I think what these people have done outside of the SNL, I don't know, I guess like, Farm System, whatever. Like I love Hot Rod so much. I love Tommy Boy. Like I love all these movies from SNL-alum. You talked about John C. Reilly earlier, like Step Brothers, all this kind of stuff that you get from these people who have come from SNL. I think they usually go on to do some really great stuff, but there are those people who I think just they would hit no matter when you put them in there, for sure.
And like, because of the longevity, like, it is interesting to sort of look back. Like, it's a pretty cool like anthropological exercise as well, as far as like a snapshot of the times, because you do get to see like there were people that only fit their era, like Sandler. And then that kind of tells you like what was going on in that time. Also, what were the sketches about? What were they talking about on Weekend Update? So you get like a sense of like where we were as far as our sensibilities as a culture at the time, and also what's important. And then also you get the people that transcend their time, like, you know, Gilda Radner you mentioned, or other different people. So it's a pretty cool exercise to look at everything front to back, as you know, as far as like the catalog that SNL's put out.